So our starting point is where we stopped off last week. Last week we had a face-to-face class. We introduced a very important concept, which was calculating the real value, which is quite important. So we talked about inflation, talked about CPI, a basket of representative goods being used to sort of capture the impact of inflation. That's the concept that we introduced in class last week. So we talked about CPI being a measure of the standard of living in a country. We talked about CPI being a basket of goods, and we said changes in your CPI, they are used to reflect the level of inflation in a country. That's what we said. So we said consumer price index, you take your initial change in CPI divided by initial CPI times 100 to convert it to a percentage. That change in CPI, we said new CPI minus old CPI divided by new CPI. We got our inflation, and we said the nominal value divided by 1 plus inflation, you get your real value. That's where you spend most of our time. We calculated inflation from the CPI. Then we spent a great deal of time in our class in this slide calculating the real value of money. So let me just do a quick recap of it. Yeah, let's all be on mute. I can hear a bit of feedback. Let's be on mute. So then we calculated the real value of the stock, which was bought for 20,000. Yeah, we spent the majority of our class time on that example. So we said this stock was bought for 20,000 at the beginning of 20x4. So we calculated the level of inflation between 20x4, the level of inflation in 20x4. After we done that, we got it was 4.99. It wasn't exactly as 5% in the slides, if you remember. Then we said 20,000 divided by 1,0499. We got an answer closer to that one, but ours was more exact than that one. We did the same for number 2. Assume you bought a financial stock for 40,000 at the beginning of 20x2. What is the real value of the financial stock at the end of 20x4? We did the same, calculated level of inflation between 20x2 and 20x4. After we had done that, we took the stock, we divided it by 1 plus the level of inflation. We got our answer of 35,874. So that's how we did those ones. And I asked you to continue with the same idea for this one. Yeah, now I think you can see my answer. But let's see if we can go through this one. So this is question 3. This one I said you guys should practice. So question 3, assume that the CPI index is 1. So they gave you an index at the beginning of 20x5. So the obvious reason would be for you to calculate the inflation from 20x4 to 20x5. You started at the beginning of 20x2 with a growth-induced financial asset. So this one, it is slightly different from the ones that we are calculating, the ones that we calculated in last class. The ones that we're calculating in last class, we're calculating the real value. So with the growth-induced financial asset, the trick is it protects the buying power of your money. So instead of you dividing by 1 plus inflation, you will take and multiply by 1 plus, you multiply by 1 plus inflation. So the growth-induced financial asset grows in line with inflation. So let me highlight what I need there. So this is the key there. So if you have a growth-induced financial asset, it means it grows in line with inflation. So instead of dividing as we're doing, this time you multiply as seen there. So you say 10,000 multiplied by 1 plus inflation, of which the inflation from the beginning of 2020x2 up until 2006, the level of inflation there was 16.9%, which was calculated in this line. So 16.9 is the CPI at the beginning of the current year. 100 is the CPI at the start of 20x2, which is where we bought this financial asset from. Divided by odd, you get an inflation of 16.9. Then you take that one plus 1, you multiply 10,000 times 1 plus inflation, you get 11,690 at the end of 20x5. Are you guys comfortable with that? Let me take a break. It's the same concept that we did last week. The only key thing is this one is a growth-induced financial asset. If it's a growth-induced financial asset, it means it grows in line with inflation. So where normally you would divide by 1 plus inflation, on this particular case, you would multiply by 1 plus inflation. Are you guys comfortable with that before I proceed? Happiness there, guys. If you are good to go, give me a thumbs up. If you have a question, I'm going to open the floor for questions. So it's either you have a question or thumbs up there. Are you guys good there? I can see a thumbs up. So just to repeat it one more time, the key there is it is a growth-induced financial asset. So a growth-induced financial asset, the secret is it grows in line with inflation. So you are taking the level of inflation of 16.9%, you add it there, you calculate it at this point, 116.9 minus 100 divided by 100, you get the answer is 16.9%. Then this time around, instead of dividing as we normally do, you take the 10,000, you multiply. So when faced with a growth-induced financial asset, you always multiply plus 1 plus inflation. Happiness there, guys. That's the reason why I'm emphasizing, because it is important. Right? Perfect. Don't forget that. That is quite critical. Then we have question 4, another one. So this one is almost similar to the one that we did. So assume that you have a nominal salary of 60,000 per annum. What is your real wage at the end of 20x4? So your nominal salary is at the beginning of 20x4, implying that at the end of 20x4, we have to calculate your level of inflation. So the inflation is calculated by, so you want to calculate the level of inflation for 20x4. So this is shown by this. This is your level of inflation for 20x4. 115 minus 1.06.2 and divided by 106.2 times 100, you get 5%. Then the real wage becomes 600,000 divided by 1.05. So it means you've actually lost, this is your real wage. So after calculating your real wage, the question is asking, what is the loss in your purchasing power? So the loss in your purchasing power is the initial amount of 600,000 that you had minus the new real value of 571. It means we actually lost purchasing power of 28,571. So you calculate your real value, real wage, and after calculating your real wage, you calculate the loss in purchasing power, which is 600,000 minus 571, which gives you 28,571.3. Yeah, I'll give you a second to digest that one. So you do what we did last week. The only difference now is you have to calculate the actual loss in purchasing power. And how do you calculate that actual loss in purchasing power? You take the nominal value, the original one, you subtract the new real value, that gives you your nominal, your real loss in real wage, which is 28,571.43. Happiness there, guys. Happiness there, guys. Are you comfortable with that one? If you're comfortable, give me a thumbs up. If you have a question, let me know. Raise your hand up if you have a question. So it's exactly what we were doing last week. The only exception is this time around, you take your new real value, you subtract from your nominal value to get your real wage. That's the only slight difference there. Any questions there before I go on to the next slide? Give me a thumbs up because that's important. These kind of calculations, you can expect them in test one.
Sorry, sir.
Hmm?
On question 4, on the answer, it says inflation rate for 20x4, which is 115.5 minus 106.2. Where does 106 come from? Is it the one that we did last week, the CPI? Okay.
This.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
All right. Are you guys good? Are you guys good? Are we happy? Before I turn on to the next slide. So master these calculations, expect these calculations in your test one. You need to know these calculations. All right. Now let's move on to economic growth. So economic growth, like I did touch a bit of it in my class, yeah, not much. So economic growth, we are looking at real GDP. So the whole point of us calculating a real GDP, it would be to calculate economic growth. So economic growth, it is the change in real GDP from one year to another. It means if you want to calculate the rate of economic growth of a particular country, yes, it's been recorded, it was recorded. It doesn't mean you have to not enter class, you have to enter class, but it is being recorded, Cleopatra. Hopefully you are attending, but it's being recorded. So if you are calculating your economic growth, it is the change in real GDP. That's what economic growth is. So once you've calculated your real GDP, which is your nominal GDP, 1 divided by inflation level, you get your real GDP. Now economic growth rate becomes the rate of change in real GDP from one year to the next. So like how you calculate your inflation, only this time around, you'll be using real GDP. You will say new real GDP minus old real GDP divided by old real GDP. So real GDP is what we use to calculate inflation. And what is GDP? This is the total value of final goods and services. We haven't uploaded it, guys. Don't worry about the recording yet. I haven't uploaded any recordings. I will communicate information regarding recordings. We can focus on class. I haven't uploaded any recordings of yet. I'll let you know once I've started uploading the recordings. I haven't uploaded any recordings yet. Yeah, let's do this one. I'll announce it when the recordings I've uploaded there. All right. So we're talking about the GDP. What is GDP? So GDP is the final value of goods and services produced within the boundaries of a country. So GDP is typically measured within a given period, for example, a year, right? So once you have your GDP, you calculate your real GDP, then you use your real GDP to calculate your economic growth rate, which is the change in real GDP from year to year. So we will use this definition almost like how we calculated inflation as the rate of change in your CPI. We will calculate economic growth as the rate of change in real GDP from one year to the next. Then you also have your national accounts. So your national accounts are, it shows us a record of all our transactions with the rest of the world. So we look at your total of transactions, we look at imports and exports. That's what our national accounts are. So we look at our transaction compared to the rest of the world. Look at aggregates. That's what our national accounts are. Then this is how we measure our GDP. So there are approaches to measuring our GDP there. There is the aggregate expenditure approach, where we talk about the production method is the value-added approach, where we look at the aggregate income. Your aggregate income is your income for the factors of production. Remember, we talked about the rewards for the factors of production, which we said it is wages, rent, profit, and interest. So your rewards for your factors of production give you the GDP using the income approach. Then we have your production approach, we would look at your production. So here we look at your production function, look at primary, secondary, and tertiary sector of production. That is a production approach for GDP. Then we have the aggregate expenditure, which you look into detail later on. So with your aggregate production method, your aggregate expenditure approach, there is C, which represents your consumption expenditure, plus I, which represents your investments, plus G, which represents your government expenditure, plus, hopefully you can see what I'm writing there, plus X, which represents your export, minus M. So written in a pattern writing there, your aggregate expenditure using the aggregate expenditure method, it is that C for consumption, plus I, which represents investment, plus G, which represents your government expenditure, plus X, which represents exports, minus M, which represents imports. So we're going to look at that in detail. We're going to do a number of calculations using this formula. Then we did talk about leakages last week. We said leakage is equals to injections when we looked at the circular flow of income. So I'm not going to waste more time on that one. So this is what I was talking about. So this is the expenditure approach. You look at spending on final goods produced in a country. C, this is the consumption expenditure by households. So when we buy goods and services that we consume, when we buy cell phones, when we buy food when we satisfy our basic necessities of life, that is a consumption expenditure. Plus I, these are investments which are made by firms, plus G, which is government expenditure, plus X, which are export minus Z. So this is known as the expenditure approach. Are you guys comfortable with that? Before I proceed, are you guys comfortable with that before we proceed? So that one is known as your expenditure approach, where you take consumption expenditure by households, add investments by firms, aid government expenditure, aid exports minus imports. Later, when we get to the second term, we're going to look at this consumption for this function in detail. When we do Keynesian calculations, we are going to do this in further detail when we do Keynesian calculations. Then we have the income approach. So with the income approach, we look at the income that the factors of production produce. We look at remuneration of employees. We look at gross operating surplus, which is your total rent, plus interest and profit. We also look at GDP, which is remuneration of employees plus gross operating surplus. So your operating surplus, it is the reward of the factors of production which are mentioned when you take your rent, interest and profit. That's your gross operating surplus. Then you have your remuneration of employees, which is the wages that you pay them. So GDP is equal to remuneration of employees plus gross operating surplus. So your gross operating surplus is rent, interest and profit, while your remuneration for employees, these are salaries. So you take your salaries, add them to your rent, interest and profit, that gives you GDP according to the income approach. So it's basically those rewards on the factors of production, where you take your rent, interest and profit, and add it to the remuneration of employees. Happiness there, guys? Any questions there? Are you guys comfortable with that one? Then finally, you have the production method. So with the production method, you look at the contributions of the different sectors of production. You look at the primary sector, you look at the secondary sector, and you look at the tertiary sector. Obviously, the primary sector is to do with extraction of raw materials from the ground. Then secondary sector would be the manufacturing. So you isolate the contribution of the primary, secondary, and tertiary, add them together, give you GDP, and that GDP that you get is core GDP using the value added approach. Are you guys comfortable there? So these are the three approaches. So I'll see if I have time, maybe we do a couple of questions today, but when you talk about GDP using the production approach, we're talking about the contribution of the different sectors of production, like what we have there. Any questions there, guys, with that slide before I move on? Are you guys comfortable there? If you are, give me a thumbs up. If you have a question, you're allowed to ask a question before I move on. Any questions there? All right. All right, now let's move on to your next slide. Yeah. So this activity, this one is showing us how we sort of calculate our, let me open it from a different, let me open it from my end as well, because it's not that visible. It's a bit small font from my end. So this is what we have there. So that slide is talking about, is giving you information there. So that table is how we calculate our GDP using the production method. So let me explain what is happening there. So in that slide, you have your cost. So our equation starts from the farmer. So the farmer, they get cotton seeds, they plant cotton, they will irrigate that cotton, and they'll use fertilizer and they'll manage that. And whatever the cotton they manage to get, they sell it at 120. So that is the value added by the farmer. So the farmer adds 120 because they get the cotton seeds, they plant the cotton, they tend for the cotton, maybe fertilize it, irrigate it until it's grown. The value that they add is captured by the price which they sell the cotton for, which is 120. So that's the value added by the farmer at the first stage of production. Then we go to the second stage of production, which is the cloth manufacturer. So that cloth manufacturer buys the cotton for 120. They process the cotton, they spin it, they process it into cloth. And that cloth is sold to the shirt manufacturer for 180. Therefore, it means the value added by the cloth manufacturer, it is the difference between the 180 that is sold the cloth for minus the price at which they bought the cotton for 120. So it means the value added there, it is 60. Are we comfortable with that? So that's the value added by the by the cloth manufacturer. At stage 2, they're buying the cotton at 120, process it into cloth, and that cloth is sold to the shirt maker for 180. So the value they're adding in the production process, it is the difference between how much they're buying the cotton, how much they're buying the cotton for 180 and how much they sell the cloth for. So that is the 60 that they add. Are we comfortable there, guys? I'll take a pause there. Are there any questions there? Yes, it's simple. Go ahead.
Sir, can you please? Oh,
The value added by the cloth manufacturer. They bought the cotton for 120. They processed the cotton, manufacturer spinned it, converted it into cloth, and they sold the cloth for 180. It means the value that they're adding is 180 minus 120, which is 60. Is that clear?
yes, sir.
Then we have the value added by the shirt manufacturer. So the shirt manufacturer buys the cloth from the manufacturer. Maybe they add a few branding items. They put labels, maybe it's an Adidas or something. So the shirt maker puts some logos, makes it interesting. So the value that they've added is the difference between the 180 at which they bought the cloth from and the 250 at which they finally sold the material for. So the value added there would be what? Would be 70. So that's the value that they add in the production process. I don't know who's taking control of my presentation now. Somebody was now they've guys, don't take control of my presentation, guys. Somebody taking control of my presentation now. They've stopped presenting. Don't take control of my presentation, guys. I have to reshare it. All right. Let me see if it shares. Let me do something quickly before I reshare. All right. Let me restart. It's failing to. Right. All right, let me resume. Then we go to stage 3, where the clothing, I've mentioned step 2 to say that the shirt manufacturer, he buys the cloth for 180, they put their logos, their brands, and they sell it for 250. So the value that they add is 250 minus 180, which gives us what? 70. That's the value that they add there in the production process. Then we also look at the final one, which should be the clothing shop. So from the manufacturer, that product is transferred to your retailer, like a Mr. Price. And Mr. Price, they just do a few touches, they sell it to you maybe at 300. So the value that they've added is the difference between 300 minus 200, 250. So when you look at the price at which each stage of the production process buys and sells, the difference is the value that they add. So if you add 120 plus 60 plus 70 plus the value added of 50, it gives you the final value of 300. So ultimately, according to the production approach, your GDP is 300. So you have to show me value added at each stage of production, like you see in my slides. That is how you present this calculation if you were to do it. Are there any questions? Are you guys happy with that example? Are there any questions there? So if you want to illustrate the value added at each stage of production, you're just subtracting the price at which they're buying the material and the difference of the price they're selling for, then it ends up to 300. Then the other one is just telling us the different sectors of production. Like we have primary, which talks about your industries involved in extracting natural resources from land, like agriculture, forestry, and mining. So that one is your primary sector. Then you have your secondary, which has to do with processing of raw materials from the manufacturing sector. Then you have the tertiary, where there are services that are rendered, like your production services, financial services, and retail. Then finally, you have your nominal versus real GDP, where we have already mentioned that real GDP excludes the effect of inflation. Any questions so far, guys, on this slide? Are there any questions there? Are you guys comfortable with that slide? Maybe if guys are keep
Yes.
joining up when it's a bit late. Any questions? SM? Okay, yes, you look like you're comfortable. So master that technique. If I was to ask you to calculate GDP using the production approach, you have to use a format like that one that you see there. Then we have this next slide, which shows us how we calculate our real GDP. So what we see in the slide is almost like how we calculate our real GDP. So in this slide, we have, I'm going to start with the first table that we see up top. So in this slide, we have your nominal GDP, which we said is the GDP at market prices. Then you have your average price level. So initially, how you get your real GDP, the actual output approach, you would take your nominal GDP divided by price. So 4,000, your nominal GDP, divided by 5, that gives you 800. So that's your real GDP, actual output. You do the same for 8,100. 8,100 divided by 9, that gives you 90. Then 10.5 divided by 10, that gives you 1050. 12,000 divided by 12, that gives you 1,000. And 15,000 divided by 15, that gives you 8,000. So the first technique is nominal GDP divided by price, that gives you the real GDP. Any questions? Okay, I can see there's a hand up there from Asaka. Yes. What's your question there?
Yes, it would be organizations is very aimed as a company to scale.
I can hardly hear you. Come again.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, what are you saying, Asaka? I can hardly hear you. What are you saying?
I'll just put it in the comment section because I think you can hear me.
Yo, I can't. You can type it. I don't know what's happening with the mic, but I really can't hear you. You can type it because I really can't hear you there. You can type a question there. While Asaka is typing her question, do you guys have any question? Are you comfortable with what you see there, guys? We just did the first 3 columns. We took nominal GDP divided by average price. We got those real GDP at, we said that's real GDP at actual output method. So we'll do the constant prices next, but for now we just do the actual approach, actual output approach. So are you guys comfortable with that one? Okay, I can see there's a hand up there. Sbusiso, yes, go ahead.
Yes. So the CPI is given, né?
Yeah, well, we give you, for this one, we haven't got to the CPI yet. We just said nominal GDP divided by the price level, average price. So we haven't utilized the CPI yet, right?
Okay,
Are you comfortable with that? So for example, for the first one, we said for the first one, you take the value that you see, 5,000 for 2010, 4,000 for 2010, divided by 5. Obviously, that gives you an answer of what? 800. For the second year, 8,100 divided by 9, that gives you 900, and so forth. Is that making sense, Pusiso? So just simple calculations. GDP,
Yes.
nominal GDP divided by price. So we haven't utilized the index yet, but we would
Okay.
give you the price levels for you to calculate it this way. Are you comfortable
Yes.
there?
Yes, I'm comfortable. I just wanted to ask if the CPI, those figures will be given or yeah, but it seems like given.
Yes,
Yes,
you're
yes.
gonna be given. Yeah, I'm not gonna ask you. I have to give you those figures for you to calculate.
Okay, so happiness.
All right. Then we go on to the usage of the CPI index. So for the first one, you would take your, now let's go on to use CPI using the real constant prices method. So you take the 4,000 divided by 100. So always you divide by the CPI and you multiply by 100. So for 2010, the CPI is 100. So you take 4,000 divided by 100 times 100, which gives you 4,000. So it doesn't change for this first one. But for the second one, it will change because you are taking 8,100. You divide by the CPI index of 180, which is given, then you multiply by 100. So the formula to know there is you take your nominal GDP, divide by the CPI, multiply by 100, then you get your real GDP and constant prices. So you can check the other ones. So for 2011, it's 8,100 divided by 180 times 100, which gives you 4.5. For 2012, 10.5 divided by 200, you multiply by 100, which gives you 5,250. Are you guys comfortable there? So for the constant prices, you take your nominal GDP divided by the CPI and multiply by 100. Are there any questions there, guys? If you are comfortable, give me a thumbs up. If you have a question, raise your hand up. So when we calculate it via the constant price, I can give you a table like that and ask you to calculate GDP using the constant prices, which is what we have done, or the actual output method. So the actual output method, it was a straightforward one where we take the nominal GDP divided by the price. That was easy. But this one, we are taking the nominal GDP, we are dividing it by the CPI, and we multiply by 100. So it will be 12,000 for the last one from the 2013 one, divided by 240 times 100, which gives us 5,000. Then for the final one, 15,000 divided by 300 times 100, which gives us 5,000. So that's how we get the real GDPs there. Where are you lost, Asaka? Where are you lost? Where are you lost? Type it because I'm taking it line by line. Yes, Emmanuel? Quiet.
Yes, evening, everyone. I just wanted to ask, say, for us to be, if we were assessed for this question, say, you said the only thing that we need to fill are those two columns.
Yes, I will have to give you the prices, obviously, and I have to give you the CPI. So you have to just fill in those two columns only. That's what it means.
Noted, sir. Thank you.
So remember, Asaka. Yeah, guys, did you manage to get the textbook yet? That's another thing that I wanted to ask. How many of you have managed to get the textbook? You have the box Posiso. How many of you just give me by a thumbs up those who've got the textbook? Let me see. All right, at least there's a number of you. Yes, that's much better. That's much better. You need the textbook. Share with others if it's a PDF so that people can get the book because it is quite important that you get it. Yeah, this is what we're saying, Asaka. You are given your nominal GDP. You are also given your CPI. We are at real GDP using what? We're calculating real GDP using constant prices. So what we do is you take your nominal GDP divided by the CPI. So you are given the index for you are given the index for where? For 2010 to be 100. So the calculation then becomes 4,000 divided by 100 times 100. If you have your calculator, you simplify, that gives you an answer of 4,000. Then here for 2011, you are given a nominal GDP of 8,100. So you will say 8,100 divided by 180 times 100. That gives you 4.5. You do the same for 2012. Take 10,500 divided by 200 times 100. Are you comfortable with that one, Asaka? Now, is it making sense now? Are you much better now? Let me know if you're comfortable there.
Sir,
Yes.
you said we take the 4,000 and we divide by 5, then we
No,
times by 100.
no. The first one, there are two techniques there, guys. Please follow. The first one, we said nominal GDP divided by price, which we got the GDP at constant, at actual output. That was the first technique, which we finished. 4,000 divided by 5, we got 800. 8.1 divided by 9, we get 900, etc. So that was the third column, of which we did first. That is real GDP, actual output method, where you take your
Oh,
nominal
okay.
GDP divided by the price. But where we
Okay.
are now, we are at the last two columns where we are taking the nominal GDP, the CPI. We are calculating real GDP at constant prices. So what I'm saying is you take the 4,000 divided by the CPI for 2010, because it's another method. 4,000 divided by 100 times 100, get 4,000 for the first year. For the second year, 8.1 divided by the CPI of 180 times 100, you get 4.5. You do the same for 2012, 10.5 divided by 200 times 100, we get 5250. So obviously, I will have to give you nominal GDP, give you average price level, and give you CPI, and I would leave the two GDP approaches, real GDP approaches blank, which you have to fill up as we would have done. Is that making sense now?
Yeah, I do understand now.
Yes. So that's how we do it there. That's how we do it. We break the table down into like that. Any questions there? Are you guys comfortable with that one? Yes, Ntando? Go ahead.
So, sir, in theory, what's the difference between the two?
It's not really much difference. It's just, but the first approach we will not use it. Most likely we use the real GDP at constant prices. That's the formula that we're most likely going to use. The other one, it is just for calculation. We are not going to use it much. But the second definition, where we divide by CPI and multiply by 100, that is the one that we're going to use. Are you comfortable with that?
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Then we have the bottom part of the table where we calculate your economic growth. So your economic growth, it is the change in real GDP. So you have your real GDP at constant prices. The rate of change in your real GDP at constant prices gives you your economic growth. You have to know the formulas. We'll see about the formulas being given or not, but now focus on knowing your formulas, Asaka. We'll talk about the formula sheet what at a later stage, but from the get-go, try to master. And your formulas, as you can see, it's just changes, almost like we did inflation, where we said initial CPI minus old CPI divided by old CPI. It's almost the same approach that we're using now, except now we are using real GDP. New real GDP minus old real GDP divided by old real GDP, that gives you those answers. So you can compute those values and check. So I'm just going to give you a moment. See if you're getting those values. See if you're getting those values. I'm just going to give you a moment there. Luandle, it is old, same formula that we have been using. New CPI minus old CPI divided by old CPI. Now the difference is we are using real GDP. So it is new real GDP minus old real GDP divided by old real GDP. You're just changing the variables, the formula is the same. For instance, what you're given there, the new real GDP is the GDP for 2008, which is 1,814,594. The old real GDP, it's 1,751,165. So new real GDP minus old real GDP divided by old real GDP. That gives you economic growth. Are we comfortable with that, guys? Nothing has changed. Still the same formula. Initially, we're using old new real GDP, new CPI minus old CPI divided by old CPI. Now what we are using is new real GDP minus old real GDP divided by old real GDP. Are we comfortable with that, guys? If you are, give me a thumbs up before I give you time. If you have a question, you can raise your hand up. Are you guys
So
comfortable
please
here?
repeat the table.
Which one I should, what should I repeat, guys? What do you want me to repeat?
No, the last table. The last table you said new minus old divided by old. Is that correct?
Yes, so we haven't done the table yet. I'm saying calculate for me the real GDP, the economic growth. The new real GDP is the GDP given for 2008. The old real GDP is the GDP that you are given for 2007. So I am asking you to calculate for me the rate of change in real GDP, which is economic growth between 2007 and 2008. I want you to calculate for me that. Is that clear? So that we can check those economic growth rates. Is that clear, guys? Do you understand what I'm requiring of you? Hello, guys. Are you understanding what I'm requiring of you?
I'm lost.
Guys, I am saying calculate for me the economic growth rate, the figures in the last column. Don't audit them. I want you to prove for me this economic growth rate. For instance, for the first year, 1847,594 minus 1751,165 divided by 1751,65, which is why I'm saying new real GDP, which is 1814,594 minus old real GDP of 17,165 divided by 1751 times 100, you should get 3.6 because the formula is new real GDP minus old real GDP divided by old real GDP. That is what I'm saying. I'm giving you guidance so that you can plug it in and you can confirm for me. Is that making sense, guys? Yes, that's what I want you to do. So can you confirm that figure for me? Let's punch in our calculators and let's see if we're getting that. So can you punch in those and see if we're getting, are we getting the 3.6%? All right. Let's confirm the other one, the other year. Are we getting that negative 1.5? So that is how you calculate your real GDP. I'm just going to give you a second just to check the other ones.
The number is currently busy.
We've done that one. Somebody, SM, what is happening? Talk to me. You have that emoji. What's happening there, SM? What's happening?
Nothing, sir. Can you please explain to me again? I got lost on the economic growth rate. Not
Okay,
lost.
well, how did I define economic growth rate? Yeah, this stage. What did I repeat upon? What did I say is economic growth rate initially? Yeah, tell me so that I can guide you. What did I say is economic growth rate, SM?
It's the rate at which an economy is growing, sir.
Come again. You're breaking.
The rate at which an economy is growing.
Yes, and how do we calculate the rate at which the economy is growing? Let me know. How do you think if I give you two numbers, if I say there is 5, the first number, which was the first prize in 1 year, then I give you that in 2010, okay, 2009, my price, which I was selling oranges, was 5 rand. Then that's 2009. Then 2010, if I tell you now I'm selling my oranges at 8 rand, how would you calculate the percentage increase in my oranges? How would you calculate that, SM? Just a simple example. I tell you that my oranges cost 5 rand 2010. Then 2011, my oranges cost 8 rand. What's the percentage increase in my price for oranges there? How would you calculate that?
So you're going to take the new one minus the old one over the old one times 100.
Exactly. So how is it different from what you have? Is it different now
Oh,
because you have many numbers? How
oh,
different is it?
I forgot, Sage. I forgot.
Yes. So you use that one for 2008, 1814, like how you did it, the new 1814, 594 minus the old 175165 divided by the old of 1751, which is similar to what you've just told me in that example. Do you see?
Yes, Sage. I see. I
Yes.
wasn't. I thought you were
Yes.
still this
Yes.
one. Okay, Sage.
Mhm.
Wait.
Like that. Somebody's just posted a calculation like that. Yes, how I got the answer exact. I don't know if we did the correct thing. Okay, which year is that? Let me just check. But there's no 25 there. But your calculation is correct, though I don't see the 25. I think the last column should be 159. Yeah, there's no 25. What you did is correct, but there is no, according to the information that's there is no 2256. The last year should be actually be 19. It should be 195303. So instead of what you put there, the 25, you have to put the 159. But what you've done is more or less correct. Are you comfortable there, Lebohang? So you got it wrong by using 2256 because I don't have 2256, but I do have 19 something. But the way you've done it is more or less correct. Are we happy with that one, guys? Before I proceed, happiness there?
Happiness.
All right. So that's how we calculate real GDP. You use the information under real GDP, constant prices. That's what we're using, yes. Mhm. Under constant prices, yeah, not the nominal one. All right, moving on. I'm glad some are following. Moving on. Then, when you take your real GDP and divide it by the total population, you get real GDP per capita. Your real GDP per capita is the real GDP per person, which tells us what is the GDP per person in a country. And that one is a good figure. It indicates the standard of living in a country. That is real GDP per capita. Then we have your gross national income identity, where you have your GDP minus primary income to the rest of the world, plus primary income to the rest of the world. So that gives us GNI. So that's our calculation, which gives us GNI. So GNI is permanent income, is income accruing to the permanent residents of South Africa, based anywhere else in the based all over the world. So you have a small table there to say you start with the GDP at market prices, we add primary income from the rest of the world. So the primary income from the rest of the world, it is the income which is earned by permanent residents of South Africa, located elsewhere else in the world. You add that, then you subtract the primary income to the rest of the world, which is what we pay foreign nationals on South African soil. You get your GNI. Happiness there, guys. Obviously, if it comes in a test, I will give you you have to know the identity. I will not give you everything. I might give you the GDP, give you primary income to the rest of the world, give you primary income from the rest of the world. ask you to calculate your GNI, or alternatively, I could give you two variables and omit one and ask you to work backwards in the method. Are you guys comfortable with that? Are you guys happy with that before I proceed? All right, let's wrap this up. Then we have the unemployment rate. So the unemployment rate, we're looking at people who are able and willing to find work, but cannot find work because, they're probably not working. So those are your unemployment rates. So according to Stats SE, we're looking at people between the age of 15 and 64 who are able and willing to work, but cannot be able to work. So we use the quarterly labor force survey to determine the number of unemployed people in the countries. So we look at people within the formal job market and also people within the informal job market. So that's what is a comparison of. Then we have that. So those are a few calculations of your unemployment rate that you need to know, that you need to be familiar with. So we have our total population. So our total population is divided into the working age and the dependents. So the dependents are those that are too young or old, which is given by 18.4 million. Then your working age is divided into two, the labor force and the not economically active. So students are not economically active, but the labor force are everyone who's not a student. But there are some that are both students and there are both students and working age sometimes possible. We have part-time students. Then the labor force is divided to the employed and unemployed. So this brings us to our formulas here. Okay, we will calculate unemployment rate in our next class. Let me check when is that probably going to be. So we are going to have our first revision workshop, which is going to be next weekend on the 8th. So that is our first revision workshop. So put that on the calendar. So we are going to revise a past paper in preparation for you. It is going to be a workshop for 2 hours in preparation for your assessment one. So put a date, I'll make an announcement. So on the 8th, we are preparing for your test one, which will be on the 15th. So I'll announce that information. So during that workshop, we will do these unemployment calculations, right? So the formulas to know is these two formulas: that unemployment rate, it is the number of unemployed divided by the number of people in the labor force. Then we have our participation rate, which tells us that these are the people who are, what this tells us the proportion of the working age that are part of the labor force. So those are the calculations that we're going to utilize in our next session. Just know the formulas for now. And our revision session is going to be on a Saturday on the 8th, which is that other Saturday. Then your test one on the 15th. Yes, Busiso?
So question, on a Saturday, so what time will it be?
I'll announce. The revision workshop will be 11 to 1, while the assessment, which is on the 15th, probably is going to be 9. Obviously, it has to be on campus at Asaka because it is a workshop. It's going to be on campus. Also, the test one has to be on campus because you write physically. So both those on a weekend, they'll be on campus. Yes, Busiso?
So again, so are these slides also uploaded?
If they are not, I'll upload them. I think they are. Let me check. But if they are not, I'll upload them after our session, right? I'll check and upload them after our session, right?
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right, guys. Are there any questions? For today, I think I'm gonna stop here. We are gonna do these unemployment calculations in our workshop. Are there any questions there?
Yes, sir, there's a question. Sir, can you hear me? Sir, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. Is it possible to also upload the recording today so
Yeah.
we can go through it tomorrow morning when we are still fresh?
I've heard of it. Yeah, I'll post all the recordings. Maybe look at them. You can look at them at the end of the day tomorrow. But please get hold of the textbook. It's essential, right? All right. I have another question there. Who's that? Oli? Yes. Emmanuel?
No,
Is that a hand up?
I'm done, sir.
All right. Emmanuel, is that a hand up?
Say, I just wanted to confirm, say that we don't have an attendance code.
You don't have a what?
An attendance code.
An attendance code for the register. So what I'm going to do for your register is I am going to go look into I'm just gonna download. I think there is a spreadsheet, there's a recording which your attendance is captured. So what I'm just going to do is you don't have to take physical attendance. I'm gonna download the spreadsheet with your attendance. Is that fine? All right, guys, are there? Yes, Katlego?
Say about the attendance register, my names are different from the register.
They're different. How? What do you mean?
So on my on the register, my surname is different from here on Teams.
All right, you probably I'll see how I can handle. Oh, okay. Just type your student number on the box. I'll check that out. Check that out. Just type your student number.
Okay.
You can type. You type your emails, guys. Type your emails if you're sharing attendance. Yo, guys, you have many requests. Those who are sharing, type your things on thingy. Type those who are using type. Can you type your student numbers on the chat box there? Those who are sharing devices, can you type there on the chat box? Those who are sharing devices, type your student numbers there on the chat box. I'll look at them there. Those who are sharing devices, just type it there, the chat box. Yeah, strictly those who are sharing, not everyone else. Those who are sharing, right? SM, is that a question?
Yes, sir. I want to ask, next week we are attending twice on Tuesday and Saturday.
No, it will be Saturday. I was going to announce that. It's probably going to be Saturday only, which is the revision session. Are you comfortable with that?
Yes, sir.
All right. Any other questions, guys? I didn't say everyone. Those who are sharing, hey, there are many. All of these are sharing. Yeah, only for those who are sharing. The other ones, I'll get your attendance from Teams. Only those who are sharing. All right, guys. Do enjoy the rest of the evening. I think I'll see you that other Saturday because next Monday we won't have class. We'll have the revision workshop on Saturday, the 8th, which I'm going to announce. Are you guys clear on that one? All right. Do enjoy the rest of the evening, guys.
Good too, thanks.